Good evening, hi everyone, and sorry I'm a bit later streaming than normal. Had some stuff to do today and also just keep trying to catch up on stuff, and for some reason sometimes I think when the market goes crazy I just get very drained from probably so many charts, and then I end up spending so much time updating it becomes hard to keep on top of actually doing streams and doing alerts and all things like that. Anyway, just one thing I was looking at here at the start just to see where Bitcoin's at. It's kind of interesting that, so if you look at the unadjusted chart on CME, and this is the all-time high from 2021-22, and obviously we're still at breakout level. However, if you look at the adjusted chart, for what it's worth, like I don't know how much it matters. So adjusted is like each of these contract rollover dates. I think it rolls from one contract to the next and they update the price based on that. And I don't typically like to use this because, rightly or wrongly, but mainly because obviously the other chart aligns better with the normal, what we're used to looking at. So I don't know if this is very valuable, but I did find it interesting just looking at this, because I was like, what's that red line? And then I remembered, oh, it's actually, so we are actually back in this range and below all-time high on the adjusted chart, which is kind of interesting. But anyway, like, it may not matter. So obviously, as usual, I just wanted to quickly look at what FX is doing and the indices. So we're still we had a big drop on pound, catching up with Aussie, which is still struggling to hold higher lows. Euro came down a bit, but has just bounced off this weekly demand. So, and as a result, we've got the dollar rejecting off, I think this is a 5-day or a 4-day supply. 5-day. At a 5-day supply level, and the weekly is a bit higher. Excuse me. The weekly is a bit higher, and it does have a gap higher as well, so I don't know if it's all going to head back up there, but obviously struggled a bit to go higher today. We've got CPI, where are we? It's Tuesday today, so we've got CPI on Wednesday, Thursday, and PPI on Friday, so I wonder if these are just going to mess around until we've got that news coming out, because obviously that's probably going to have quite a big impact. Well, it depends what the results are, but in light of the tariffs and everything that's going on. But yeah, so anyway, the dollar at the moment is just acting how I expected. It's come up, it's testing the zone. At the moment it's rejecting slightly lower than I would have wanted it if I was trading it, but I guess we'll see. Dollar also, I obviously just tapped 4-hour demand here just above the 2-week level that I kind of wanted it in. But I talked a lot about this on the last stream, so I won't go into too much detail on it now. It's gold and silver there, I didn't mean to click on that, but so you can see, so gold broke down the first local demand, but also has a weekly a bit further below. Silver obviously heavily went down, but did manage to pick up the alert, taking out these two lows on Monday morning or Sunday night, so did give a bit of a bounce there. So at the moment we've got some levels holding and some bounces on the FX pairs. And let me just have a quick look at the alert. So I had that aggressive alert I talked about on pound on the weekly supply, so that worked pretty nicely. I had a couple of alerts on pound Aussie, and they obviously gave a bit of a scalp that hasn't broken 4-hour demand yet. Euro, I had the alert go first thing Monday or late Sunday for this weekly demand, so that's obviously held. And Euro pound just keep pushing to each of the kind of local, I think it was a daily zone, another daily zone, and then this 12-hour right at the top, and is now finally giving a bit of a move off that. Aussie, I think I said previously I wanted to take out this low. It wasn't the best low, it's just a weekly low from previously, but just to see if it got a reaction. So again, it has, and similarly with Aussie CAD, I think the Aussie CAD might have been a better low. Let's look at the monthly quickly. No, I mean Aussie CAD is still just a monthly. They're both just monthly lows. But yeah, just to see if those were going to hold, because obviously then if they want to retrace the rest of the wick, they've got a long way they could go. And they could well do that because Euro Aussie has as well. So Euro Aussie had the same giant wick from COVID, and it's sort of held for quite a while, a week or two. Just at the base, but now has come right up into the wick. So again, we might see that in reverse on Aussie US. Maybe it's going to hold here for a week or two and then suddenly collapse, mirroring this in the other direction, possibly. But I don't know. Anyway, like I say, and this Euro Aussie had a 2-day supply here, so again I was watching for possible shorts in here, but it hasn't really given any decent zones as yet. I think it gave a 4 hour, which maybe got, no, it's just running through that 4 hour now. So yeah, again, nothing really tradable in here as yet, and it could go significantly. Again, this is not a great level, but it could go significantly higher still if it wants. And if it does do that, then Aussie US is likely to collapse. New Zealand the same. You know, I wanted to see this low and then the second low potentially taken out. So we've got the first low and it's got a little bit of a bounce, but not much. Similarly, Euro New Zealand. Let me just look at what level that is. Got an alert for a possible stop hunt of whatever that level is higher up there. Let me go back. It might just be another weekly. And again, this actually is a significant high. That then has monthly supply, you know, not far above that. I think it might have already wicked into that previously, but anyway, like this may or may not stop here, but that's an alerted zone should it go there. And then I think, yeah, Euro Swiss franc was more of a weak bounce. So I had the alert for this that I talked about in the last stream on this retest of 4 hour, and it has gone through it and it did bounce, but then again, you know, again hasn't got higher than local supply and it's coming back down again. And this was always a bit of a risk on this one anyway, because hopefully I mentioned it in the last stream, it has these trend line stops here, major low and then another major low, plus is coming off annual supply. So it doesn't really surprise me, you know, and obviously we've got multiple because there were a few zones coming in here. The yen pairs I think fared a little bit better, but again just haven't gone very far. So we did get a nice long off dollar yen on the Monday test. Hasn't quite gone up to, it's got tapped off weekly supply and rejecting, but hasn't quite gone to the zone I had alerted for a short. Aussie yen I think bounced just above, like I had an alert for the 2-month demand, the alert went, but it bounced just above there. It's also got a 3 months just a bit below. Pound also got a bounce off this daily zone. Again, it wasn't the best zone in the world, but it was worth a try given the drops that we had previously. So it gave a bit of a bounce, but that's it. And Euro Yen has had a rejection finally off this weekly supply, although it messed around a bit first. And then finally the CAD pairs. So CAD, I had an alert here that I talked about that I had 12-hour supply and then a 4-day just above it. So the 12 did reject on Friday, but then it went up into the 4-day a little bit higher. Obviously now it hasn't come down very deep, but gave a bit of a scalp off there. Similarly with Euro CAD, again, actually I think this did go through the zone. The zone was I think for a daily supply, and it did eventually wick taking out the daily, although it's still obviously a lower high overall, but again just trapped between daily supply, daily demand. And Pound CAD was one of the better ones, you know, so I talked again in the last stream about, you know, I'd had an alert here on the 3-day supply and it did take its time, went significantly up into it, but I think did still hold it. Then I put in a more aggressive alert for a retest. I think this was, may or may not have been a 4-day at the time. I think it might have just been a daily or a 12-hour supply there. And then it's come back down into what I considered a bit of a risky zone. It's a high time frame level, 3 months, but when there's nothing here, low time frame, it makes it potentially a little bit harder. Yeah, anyway, sort of giving a nice bounce now. So yeah, some of these, yeah, so we haven't had much action this week, which is, I guess, is not surprising after the fallout from last week. I wanted to talk about the indices, so I can see now they're coming down, having been away from my computer a couple of hours. So all of these, let me just go to the daily. Obviously all of these are bounced, so like per my last stream, obviously they were ploughing through zones. So we had, and for the most part, like all of them have an annual demand sort of they've tested already. I think in the case of Nasdaq and maybe one of the others, but all Aussie, yeah, all their incoming, all their bounce just on monthly is slightly above. So my alert on Dow didn't quite go. So I was wondering if we were going to get a little bit of a move lower, another test lower, and then we'll just see, you know, is it going to swing fail the weekly low from Asia on Monday morning, or is it going to collapse further from here. Looks like it may, you know, these may make daily supply tonight, and there's another couple of hours, so we'll see where the close is. So just be a bit conscious of that. One thing I wanted to observed in the, I put an observation written in the chat in my Telegram channel, was looking back at COVID. So, and particularly for the Dow, that So I was like, how easily could this go through an annual demand? So I wanted to kind of just comment here that this was an annual demand pre the COVID dump. And what happened is, it did come down after the initial dump. But I assume this is the start of COVID, and I don't know whether the bigger dump was post the release of the news or what. I can't remember the chain of events here. But it did get a bounce off that annual level, had 3 days of up, and then on the Thursday it then obviously proceeded to then entirely, I've got the annual level drawn back in because it did end as a swing failure, but it proceeded to then go all the way back through it, in this case down to a weekly demand or almost to the annual demand below, before coming back up again. So it was kind of crossing my mind again, while we do have these annual demands here, be conscious that if this is a black swan kind of event, and if there is going to be continuation and more tariff news, that could be a catalyst for this to, if it wants, run all the way through. So anyway, I've got the alert set of that for annual demand, and then another one for 2 month inside it, a bit lower, and we just need to see what reactions we get. S&P was similar. I think my alert did go, but again, it just tapped off. So I've reset the alert on this. I'm just going to the weekly, it's a bit easier. So again, that grey is the annual level, so it tapped off the top, the breakout level, that green line there. So again, if it comes back down, I'd be looking for a swing failure of the previous low, of Monday's low. Else potentially we could go down deeper, and that this is the 50 fib here, but the 61 fib actually lines quite nicely. So some of the fibs on these are lining up quite nicely with lower zones. So I'm again conscious of that and whether we may go deeper inside. Is this going to this also might create a daily supply today. So I'll have a look at that a bit later. Nasdaq's the same. So Nasdaq I think actually did hit the annual. So it's got a weekly sitting on top of it, which I'll probably delete now actually. But yeah, it did hit the annual zone there. Again, may or may not create daily supply, but just seeing what's going to happen and seeing the follow-up. So really I just kind of want to see, you want to see this test supply and then demand hold, etc. And really I would prefer to see 8 or 12 hour demand zones. On none of these do we have those at the moment. So I'm not overly confident. This is more promising on not creating the daily supply, new daily supply, but we shall see. But it is hard, it's like, for me, I find it hard on these bounces, if you go back to the big drops we've had with COVID, COVID really is the only comparison. All the other big drops we've had, you have plenty of time, many days for it to make higher lows, consolidate, etc. It was only really the COVID drop that had a significant drop and then some real volatility. But even then, I guess it's still made daily demands and things like that to be able to look for long entries a bit later. So yeah, I'm just cautious on this, or cautiously optimistic. Let me see what else. So yeah, on Nasdaq. So J225 again. So it's holding 6 month. I wanted it to take out ideally all these lows. It's taken out just those lows. But again, the annual is a little bit lower on that if it chooses to go down. EU, I think, might be the anomaly. Yeah, so the yearly level on this is down here. It's quite a lot lower, and then there's a monthly or a 3 month. I've got an alert for a 3 month demand, which is just above where that crosses, and then saying a yearly's inside. So, but again, is it just going to hold? Ideally, we'd wanted to take out that low for a swing failure and something more tradable, but again, just see what happens in here. Aussie already hit the yearly. I think that's the only one that hit and went significantly, well, no, not significantly deeper, but a little bit deeper in the zone. It's got a 3 monthly demand there, so it did hit. I was initially looking for a swing fail of those lows, so that was the black cross, and then it was kind of like, well, this is the annual level, and then here's the 3 monthly zone inside it. So again, a decent zone for longs, but really want to see those low time frames support. And then finally the FTSE. So yeah, the yearly on this is messy, so this is not, all the others are a bit cleaner on the yearly. So this, as you can see, is kind of offset with a few other candles. So this is the level, or that level, and it's come down now to the just below that lower level. And again, in 2 month, 3 month demand here. But it's just, yeah, this is not as clean as I would like compared to the other charts, but again, it's still, it's still holding that breakout level. So it's only if we start to see these break down that we've got serious problems. So again, it's still, it's still holding that breakout level. So it's only if we start to see these break down that we've got serious problems. So it's only if we start to see these break down that we've got serious problems. So it's only if we start to see these break down that we've got serious problems. So it's only if we start to see these break down that we've got serious problems. So it's only if we start to see these break down that we've got serious problems. So it's only if we start to see these break down that we've got serious problems. So it's only if we start to see these break down that we've got serious problems. So it's only if we start to see these break down that we've got serious problems. So it's only if we start to see these break down that we've got serious problems. So it's only if we start to see these break down that we've got serious problems. So it's only if we start to see these break down that we've got serious problems. So it's only if we start to see these break down that we've got serious problems. So it's only if we start to see these bre But, you know, whether it's going to have time. The only other thing with FTSE, I think, as I observed, is there were quite kind of, there's the yearly low is a little bit lower here, and then there's equal lows down here. So again, I just don't know if these are going to have bigger drops. And the other thing I was considering, you know, is are these drops potentially now the correction? So I did do fibs on everything. So are these drops also like a bigger correction of this entire up move? So again, I've done fibs on all of these and looked back also to see whether they do respect. So I think the FTSE, for example, did respect the 61 quite well. I think maybe EU or one or two of the others don't respect it very well. And then I think FTSE, S&P and the Dow respect the 61 quite nicely. So, you know, if we are going to get a bigger correction then, and we're going to correct, you know, from May 2020, then potentially we could come down the 61s down here in this untested monthly zone. So are we going to come down significantly deeper? Else the other fib you can do, you know, well, again, there's options. You know, this is now broken. I think they've even broken. So even if I fibbed from here, it's come to the 78.6. But yeah, so again, just looking at the fib from October 2022, if that was a 5-wave structure going up, again, it's just hit the 61 fib here. So yeah, there's some, you know, things. Basically, the upshot is everything's at decent levels, pretty much. Couple of things I might want slightly lower, such as the S&P and the Dow, but they also can front run me. It's possible. I don't tend to like there being the low on Monday in Asia though. So you would, if that's the case, normally you'd expect it to get taken out, but I guess we'll see. Yeah, so we need to see a little bit more of what's going to happen on those. Obviously in alignment with Bitcoin, which is why I go into detail on that, because obviously Bitcoin sort of much follows to some extent, or follows at least on the lower time frames. So Bitcoin of interest is, you know, that we've broken this trend line from October 2023, but then there is this sort of a more major trend line coming from the actual low in November 2022. So I don't know how useful it is that we've broken this trend line, but it's something I had in there. My issue with this, and as I said in my last stream, you know, that it looked like things, or maybe on the Telegram channel, I can't remember, but things would look like they're going to make weekly supply. Ether already had weekly supply, which it rejected, and then it looked like the majors, a lot of the alts, anything that was slightly stronger than Ether was last week, then created this weekly supply this week. It's got a 3-day up inside it, and again, you know, maybe in its favor. It's got a couple of CME gaps still higher, but either way, as of yesterday, we rejected right off that level. So I did have, just a comment, I did have this long entry that I talked about that was on just a 30-minute demand, but I said I only want to trade this if it was going to swing fail the 81k level. So I think those wicks, maybe these wicks, 81,200 or thereabouts. Again, that's just what's been used as resistance. So, and this is also potentially looking like it might create a daily supply today. So at the moment, for me, there isn't anything particularly worth buying on this. Do I want to short it? Shorting so close to 3-month demand isn't ideal. And it's, again, difficult because things remain still in zones that they could get a decent bounce. But then arguably we thought that on Ether, which I'll look at in a minute. But then Ether obviously has now gone straight through a 3-month demand zone. It was a weak demand, but it's still gone all the way through it with very little bounce at all. Which again is the challenge. Either way, Bitcoin didn't quite get to the zones that I wanted, and even my more aggressive, the 3-month gets front run zone at 72k. As I've said before, my preference I think was was kind of around this 66 or 66, 69. There's maybe a bit more confidence, a bit more deeply inside this bigger 3-month, and then also failing that, obviously it can retrace. And 61 fib actually is at 66, 67 area as well. So kind of around here I thought would be decent. There's a monthly in there as well, but that top section really is where you want to see it bounce. And also holding this support that was support, resistance support at 62. Like if we start going under there, then I'm going to be quite concerned, and also will break a bigger trend line again. But yeah, so from a scalp perspective, I'm still short. We are still, okay, yes, it's possible we swing fail the last week's low or the week before's low, March low even. Possible we swing fail there, but in order for that to be kind of valid, we need to see it come through supply. And everything's pretty tight in here. So again, a quite similar scenario to when we were messing around in this consolidation. You know, everything's quite tight, so either you're scalping the lower time frames, or you are scalping the lower time frames, and or waiting for some bigger structure to be reclaimed. So in this case, I would want to see us come back through this weekly supply, not reject too hard off the monthly if it tests again up here, and then hold this weekly now supply as a new demand. But yeah, we have to see what we get. I haven't looked at any new low time frame entries on this because, like I say, I still wanted to go down into my zones of interest for longs and hopefully not run straight through them. I think, yeah, confluence-wise, Korea obviously is still, again, might still hold the swing failure of that low from March, but again, has a significantly lower, it could fall on this. So again, just be wary of that as well, that we do want the confluence to be there. So it's possible the US dollar pair can hit first and bounce, and then Korea catches up later. We do sometimes see that the confluence come in after the fact. So it doesn't necessarily, if we did fall off here, it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to instantly have a, whatever the drop is there, 12% drop, because that would potentially take if I did 12% broadly from here, so that would take it to, yeah, around 67. So maybe that actually would work out okay if it did happen. Anyway, US dollar dominance obviously remains strong. It already had the weekly demand and it just tapped off the top of that in the first few days of last week, which I already talked about. It's made a new 2-day demand. So again, nothing here for me to look for shorts on, or therefore longs on the rest of the market really. Other than again being in this higher time frame supply, but there's nothing lower time frame that's saying this is going to have a lower high. And while I wanted lower at this low, that circle, we didn't get that. We did get a double bottom, and again double bottom then potentially taking out the high of the range, and we just missed this 3-month level up here. So I think at the moment I'm still wanting higher on this, lower on everything else. And again, just are we going to get some sort of weekly, or no, daily, not multiple days, I mean for a week or two, are we going to get sort of some weekly consolidation here before we get the next move, or is it just going to go straight up? I'm not sure. But yeah, there's nothing really supporting me looking for longs on the higher time frame on Bitcoin yet. If it goes up and it does form a swing failure of the March low, then great, then we can start looking once we break some supply. But yeah, with new supply, I'm not really inclined to look for longs there. Ether obviously was just like wow. So and again, I did my bearish short on Ether. So if you watched that, when was it? A couple of days ago, then you would know why I thought there was a risk of these zones breaking. So this had a 3-monthly demand, which I had initially alerted at the top. Got a bounce like halfway inside it, but again didn't get very high. Then I had an alert for the 3-week inside the monthly, so that was this zone. And then also I said my preference was the daily at the bottom of that, which was the 61 fit. But as you can see, obviously we've wicked all the way through that, taking out all these lows. The only thing at the base here, and I did comment on this I think in that last detailed stream that I did, is there was a CME gap that hadn't been filled from when we had this pump off the 2 months back in, when was that? March 2023. So there was always a CME gap at the bottom here, and it has the bottom has exactly aligned with the bounce on the CME gap, and also the all-time high 2018 level is in this area. I was looking at this in hold on, let me find my other chart which has less stuff on it. So I was looking at this, without all my mess on the chart. So is this the right one? Yeah, Bitfinex. Which is kind of interesting when you look at it like this. So yeah, you can see there that we've, that's the all-time high 2018. So again, is it, like it came up above that, it held the demand that broke that level. And now, but then again, as I've said before, this demand hasn't been strong enough to break the sellers up at 4K. So this is not strong demand, but in its favor, it could hold here as a retest of the 2018 level. But I don't love it. But similarly we are in 2 month demand. The 3 months a little bit lower, so I do have an alert a little bit lower again. If it does get another drop into this 3 month and then failing that, then obviously this is extremely bearish. And for the annual demand down at $730 would be the next level that I'd really be interested in. But yeah, this is an interesting level to be at, actually, an interesting area. So from here, 1400, okay, I wanted 16 for the higher low. It can still again swing fair on the weekly or even the monthly. So this could still be a stop hunt of these lows, and closing above and closing strong on the monthly or the weekly, then maybe we can reconsider this being a breakdown. But at the moment we are now looking at a breakdown of this immediate higher highs, high lows structure, which isn't great. But yeah, so the weekly close on ETH is going to be pretty critical. Still, again, not looking for longs particularly on this. So I was looking, so on the lower time frames, again, I haven't done any detail for short entries yet, because it's just, I find it hard now, when things are this low, I really want the bigger retracement before I look for proper shorts. So again, I'm just going to stick with looking at alts and things like that. I did do the fibs, so just to show, I've said previously, I think, and again in the last video, that the 61 fib is very liked on Ether, and you can see multiple examples. So if I fib from there to this drop, retest after that wick with 61 fib. If I fib from the drop after the bounce to the next low, also the retest was a 61 fib. And it's unusual, they're not actually that clear on the waves, they're not really all ideal waves that I would like the retest. But again, if there is a clear wave, it's worth fibbing it just to see this again, this last move, 61 fib. The reason I say that is because my preference would be to fib this whole move, and then you can see we didn't get back to the 61 fib on the bounce after that. But if I fib the shorter version, having already done the 61 there, and then I fib from the top since the 61 was done, then again, this has come back exactly into the 61 level for that rejection. So just be conscious of that. So, and then again, because of that, I'm then unsure, do I want to fib? Let me have a look at this. Yeah, so again, we had the drop, and that actually just missed my red cross there. But again, the wick went just below the 61 fib on this last wave. So then I'm unsure, should I fib from the top here on Wednesday last week to the bottom? This would be this small fib here, and then that would again align, 61 would align with the point of breakdown and the top of that 3-week demand that I was looking for a long on. Or alternatively, if I fib from the top of the last week of March down to this bottom, then that 61 aligns quite nicely with the 2-day supply that's in there. But given I'm not convinced this is actually the low, or that we put in the low yet, we've made a new 8-hour supply in there on the last close. So then I was kind of looking at, if we bounce here, where is the 61? Obviously the 61 comes in even lower on both of those. So maybe this is the low, I don't know, but I want to see a little bit more PA before faffing around trying to figure out where the 61 fibs are. And this, we do also still have some CME gaps low. So I've set a new alert on this for the 3-month demand. So again, I'm just watching the low time frames to see if it gives me anything tradable here. So far not, and so far still bearish. And then the next level, 1300, would be the 3-month demand for next possible entry, and then we're really just praying it's going to hold. Unfortunately, Ether BTC, so again, the zone I was looking for on Ether BTC was taking out the low here, which didn't quite test 2 monthly demand here. As I've said again, this is still also weak demand, and this really has shown no signs of bouncing, but excuse me, again, something you can keep an eye on here. It is in a zone of interest, but again, no sign as yet of it doing anything. And yeah, that's about it on Ether. So there you can see that CME gap that closed here, exactly down to that wick there. But yeah, so and the CME chart just looks dreadful without the history on it. It makes it look even worse. Yeah, so not much more to say on those. If you have any questions, please ask. I'm just, so like I say, so the too long don't read version, the summary on Bitcoin and Ether is I remain still bearish because we've made new weekly supply on Bitcoin and then new 2-day or 3-day on both. And there is nothing that's telling me to long this at the moment. There are, you know, possibilities for, okay, this might bounce here. So I could make bullish arguments for taking a long, but I think the bearish arguments are much stronger and remain stronger. So I still want to see Bitcoin come down into these lower levels and then see the reaction there ideally. And if anything changes, I will update accordingly. Lower time frame, I think, yeah, there's nothing really to say. I was kind of looking to see if we got a bounce on 61 fibs and on the, you know, I think Ether did have an 8-hour demand, but it's run through it. Bitcoin had a 4-hour, but it's run through it. So again, yeah, I wanted to see if those were going to hold a bounce and if around, you know, the 61 fib. So Bitcoin could hold here. It's broadly in the area of the 61 fib and also that March low, if it was going to hold a retest. So maybe we're going to get a move from here, but Ether's still looking pretty ugly and both now have 4-hour supply and Ether also 8-hour supply. So yeah, a bit more to see on that and just wait for the lower zones would be my advice there, or something to change. On the majors, yeah, I wanted to update these just so you could sort of see the zones more than anything. The same really applies, like all of the majors, I think pretty much all, maybe slightly different on EOS and possibly Atom because their structures are slightly different, but virtually all of these I have similar to Bitcoin and Ether. They have 2-day supply and or new weekly supply, so at least the 2-day, if not the weekly as well, and some have the weekly already, but they've all again come back down into zones of interest. So, well, I say all, not all, in fact. So BCH, I had the monthly demand here that I was watching, so it's come off there. Litecoin, I did have the 5-day alerted. My mouse has disappeared. I had a 5-day demand alerted here, and it has wicked through it. And again, I said there was a risk of taking out these stops here. And I've got that second alert down here on the daily at the base if it goes for more of the stops. I need to again think through kind of where I want to short, where I want to look for shorts on these, because I don't want to be, again, don't want to be too aggressive, but don't want to be too conservative either. And yeah, I just want to see confluence because, and again, you know, once we've had these bigger drops down, you know, at some point we're going to get, you know, even if we're still bearish, we're going to get some sort of a retracement. And that retracement, so I was looking at the fibs on some of these. So for example, on Litecoin, the fib would be up at this higher zone. Excuse me. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Assuming this is the low. So the fib's going to be up at this 3-day or the 2-week supply a little bit higher. And at the moment I had a more aggressive alert on this weekly in here because I wanted that to hit last week. Now it's come down here, I'm, you know, probably less inclined to short in this area, but I still need to go through them and have a look. The other thing I really looked at was the BTC pairs, just to see what confluence we had. So, okay, so just in summary on this, obviously Ripple hasn't got to the zone, even the 3-day, and then even my more conservative 3-day alert down just below 1.2. So Ripple hasn't got to the demand yet, nor has EOS, because obviously EOS had pumped previously. EOS gave a really nice short entry on the 12-hour supply, and then it came up for a second test. Didn't go. I was hoping it might go for the second short entry above, but didn't. But now it's coming off, and also it might create a daily supply. So I would look for more shorts on EOS if it confirms this daily supply today. And the others I don't want to short quite so aggressively, so I'll have to wait for higher zones. But BCH and Litecoin are in major demand. So on that basis, I then wanted to check what the BTC pairs were doing. So for example, on BCH, where are we? BCH is kind of an interesting, possibly interesting level. So we had these huge pumps on BCH last year and the year before, and then it's just kind of retraced the whole thing. I was hoping for the higher low there, which we didn't get, and it came back through. And you know, now is in this 5-day demand, and given the US dollar pair is on monthly demand, and this could be a deviation of the lows come back through and to go back up at least 6-month possible annual supply up there. I think BCH is worth watching. And also, as I've said previously, Grayscale, the BCH Grayscale pair, I think is finally in a decent demand. And hopefully it hasn't run, I'll check that a bit later, but hopefully it hasn't run a bit further through that now with this. I think the second drop might have taken it a bit lower inside, but it is also finally on a monthly demand. The same applied with Litecoin. That was the other one that I had on Grayscale. I was waiting for a level to hit, which has now hit. The problem with Litecoin is while it's in monthly demand, you know, it's one, like I said, I don't like the trend line stops. It's not a decent demand from the US dollar pair. And then obviously this BTC pair is still looking pretty horrendous. It has made 3-month supply. It hasn't quite tested that, but obviously it has made it. Okay, possibly it might find support. You know, it's got a few lows down here that it's held on wicks. But again, this is not something that I would particularly look for longs on in when I compare it to BTC. So of all these 4 new majors, BCH I think is like the main one that I would potentially look for longs on. EOS again doesn't look bad. It has made that double bottom and it had a move up into there, but the problem again with this is it's right in 3-month supply. It's come quite high into 3-month supply. Let me just zoom in a bit. So obviously it's come high inside, and if it does close above this dash level in, you know, 2.5 months time, 2 months 23 days, then great. But that's a long time till that candle closes to see if we're actually going to have the flip of that monthly. But yeah, so EOS I would potentially look for the possibility of longs again on this if it comes down to this 2-week level, but being conscious it comes from a 3-month supply. So I don't know, and again, you know, EOS has had the pump because of the rebranding. I don't know if it's gonna, you know, if it really has the capacity to continue, unless the rest of the market does as well. And you can see I've talked previously, we've had these bounces before on EOS, and then finally they just tend to resolve into an epic downtrend. So yeah, be a bit careful on that, but at least that can give some confluence. If EOS, the US dollar pair, does drop back to the demand I have alerted on that, then you can see if the BTC pair is in a decent spot at the same time. Ripple again, sort of still a challenging one. Ooh. I've got these giant crosses still here. I assume they should be green if they should be longs, they're not shorts, but I don't really know what those are. Anyway, sometimes the things save on different layouts. So obviously Ripple did have this huge bounce, and it's got this annual demand, which it came off here, but was unable to make a new high again. It's now got, I think it's got a monthly supply in there. It's got a 2-weekly supply and a weekly supply, and so it made a weekly and it retested and broke the weekly, and now it's got a new weekly. So Ripple again, you know, this is not, I'm not going to long a top. So while you might be bullish on Ripple and think the US dollar pair is going to break all-time high, etc., etc., this is not something I'm going to long up here when it's a consistent level of resistance. And every time it's got back here, it's been battered back down again very hard. The first time less hard, other times, but still. Whether it's going to go all the way down here, I don't know. But I mean, I want to see a bit more from this, and this is not something. So Ripple for me is not a long entry. Maybe on this daily, that would be the first kind of decent zone inside the annual. But yeah, so I think that's all the BTC pairs now, isn't it, for the new majors. So yeah, of all of these, if you want to long something, I'd be looking at BCH. And yeah, and just to reiterate, so only because the BTC pair looks nice as well. Again, just be conscious it's got all these stops down here. Just don't put your stop, if you have a stop on this, don't put your stop anywhere near those. Oh, and I guess the other issue with BCH, yeah, unfortunately, is that it also has a new 3-month supply here. So I do have that alerted for a possible short. But I guess it could get a bounce from here up to here if it wants to, and then the BTC pair potentially is going to get a bounce from here, you know, back up to one of these zones above anyway. But I suppose none of these are really looking that great for longs still. So other than the fact BCH and Litecoin are now in demands. On the new majors, it's kind of a similar scenario. So ADA, I didn't have a long entry because I know, obviously I'm conscious it's in this massive 6-month demand, but could have gone much deeper inside it. It has held the higher low, but again, we need to see. Dogecoin hit 2-month demand inside the yearly, so again, decent long entry. Link was the earliest to hit, and I was commenting on that in my last stream. There was a 5-day demand inside this monthly. It's come almost to the bottom of that, but again has held just. Link again overarchingly is in 6-month demand, and annual possibly as well. BNB also is, again, it's hit the annual demand. Similar scenario to ADA. Like I was looking for a higher low on this 12. I think it was a 12 or 8-hour demand in here or something, and it's wicked through it. But again, still holding for the higher low, and ADA still holding for the higher low. But same scenario in all of these. They will now have either 2-day, 3-day, weekly supply or immediately above. Not to mention, I think a couple may have, or maybe it's on the next page, have the monthlies in 3 months. So yeah, I need to kind of think through these a little bit more. Let me just have a look at the BTC pairs. So yeah, again, ADA I didn't like very much at all. Sure, it could, it had a daily here. It stop hunted 2 months into the 2 months monthly or 2 month demand down here, and then this could just be a retest of that level. It could hold, but again, I need to see more to be confident of that. It's fallen back below a monthly level. It might make a 3-week supply in there. It's got a monthly, and it's already, I think it's a 6-month there as well by the looks of it. So yeah, it's already coming out of 6 months supply. I'm not sure why I don't have that drawn in. So yeah, we had this bounce on ADA BTC pair up from monthly demand, but it's come straight back up into 6 monthly supply. It's made a new monthly supply, which it's swing failed and has fallen back through it. So again, this is not something I particularly want to look for longs on, despite the fact that ADA itself, the US dollar pair, is in 6-month demand. But I don't love this chart at the moment, other than the prospect that it could just hold this retest of this low. But you can keep an eye on it. It is at a support level. So if you start to see this come through some supply and make some demand, then fine. BNB, the only one with positive. So BNB is better, but again challenging. So it made a 3-week demand and it's held that. It's got a weekly supply immediately above, and then is overarchingly in a monthly supply, weak monthly supply, because it made a higher low. So yeah, on this I'm just, when it's between 3-week demand and weekly supply, I would just be indecisive. If this 3-week demand pushes it back through weekly supply, then you would look to long a retest, and then potentially we are going to get a move up here or higher. But the other real difficulty I guess I have with these is that I still think there's a distinct possibility we fall down into the next zones down. So many of these majors and the alts have multiple tests on these demands. Now obviously BNB is one of the strongest charts, but this bounce here wasn't enough to make supply. I don't know. I mean, it's possible we're going to get that second move up here and then get a bigger fall. So yeah, you can keep an eye on this, but yeah, just be conscious. Again, it's in monthly supply right now. It's made a 3-week demand, so that could push it into there. Then it's monthly supply here as well. So yes, it can get up here, but it might take its sweet time doing so. Link BTC, unfortunately, yeah, so again, this makes me much less confident on Link. But obviously now we've broken this low, and I've got an alert down here, 61 fib, and also the next monthly demand. So obviously the BTC pair on this I feel like could go lower still. So again, I wouldn't necessarily be longing Link right now, although it does again have 6-month demand. So this is the challenge. Well, what you really want is confluence of the BTC pairs with the US dollar pairs. So the confluence just isn't quite there. It doesn't mean the US dollar pair isn't going to go up, because it is possible that the whole market goes up, BTC goes up and Link goes up, but what would happen is, what you would expect is then BTC to go up more than Link, thus the Link BTC pair drops. But anyway, I have an alert set for there, and I'll be much more comfortable looking for longs if price comes back down into there. I'm just wondering why I've got a random box. Oh, it's just and this also has a 3-month supply, so for some reason I don't have the line on there, or I just deleted it by mistake. But yeah, so this now has a 3-month supply, just where that wick's rejected. I think Link did exactly the same actually. I think it made some sort of a supply and it rejected it before it was confirmed. which then makes it challenging because you don't know if it goes back there, if it will reject at the same level because it's still a key level. But if it's been rejected already, hard to say. What else do we have on here? So I've done ADA, BNB, Lincoln, so yeah, Doge is the last one. So another interesting chart, so we're in a 2-month demand here. And for, so each of these bounces, I've wanted it down in this area, 6-month demand and at least the 2-week, and it keeps front running me. So I'm hoping now is actually the time this is going to finally fall off a cliff into here. But again, at this point, we're still on a higher low, but we've got a new weekly supply above. So again, my preference on this, it could bounce here, is for it to go lower. Is the confidence there for longs on the alt market? No. If BTC goes up and everything goes up, then sure, the alts are potentially going to go up. So that seems to me to be the most likely scenario at the moment. And when I say up, I don't necessarily mean, it's going straight up like this to the moon. We could still have a good significant period of sideways messing around, and that could allow these BTC pairs to come to better zones. So yeah, I guess the summary on these majors is, sorry, losing my mouse again. So these cheap mice have a shelf life of like 2 years because both of mine broke at exactly the same time. So the TLDR on these is, I still want to be bullish on Link, ADA, and BNB. Doge has hit a yearly demand, so I want to be bullish. I want to be bullish on all of them, but I still need them to break some sort of supply and give me like long entries that hold. So I did try the aggressive longs, as I've said, last week. Everything had made 3, 4, 5 day demand, so I kind of tried these aggressive longs, but none of them held. Or they held only, like you can see on ADA, which gave the small bounce up to that weekly supply for the short entry. So while I want to be bullish because they're in major demands, I know firstly that in most cases they're weak demand because they haven't broken all-time highs, or they've only broken by a very insignificant amount like BNB and Sol. So I know they're weak demand, but I still would like to get some sort of bounce off them, which may or may not make a new high, but should give at least a decent corrective move. But I have to wait until I see structure that tells me that that's going to happen. And so far I'm not seeing it. And the one attempt I had last week of kind of going, maybe we'll make a higher low now, it was still a bit too aggressive with hindsight. We hadn't broken any supply, but you can look for the demand to hold on the higher low even without breaking supply. It's just a riskier entry. But in all cases, they've come straight back through them. Then finally we have Sol, Atom and NEAR. So NEAR hit the zone I wanted, Sol hit the zone I wanted, Atom went through the zone I wanted because it hates me, and DOT isn't quite there yet. So from a confidence perspective, obviously DOT would be nice to go lower. I also had a look on the BTC pairs on these, and I'll tell you that I think NEAR BTC and DOT BTC are horrendous, so again the confidence isn't there. So yes, while it would be nice if we got a bounce here on NEAR, at the moment this is looking very weak compared to everything else. So I've set another alert there for the 3-day demand should it go deeper into the zone. There's a daily just here, so you can watch. I would like to see NEAR give a bounce here. I suppose it's not the cleanest 3-month, it's kind of offset from the price by a second candle, so it can come down deeper inside. But yeah, I still think, it's worth an eye on it as a weekly demand and a 3-month demand. But at the moment, again, no sign of any bounce, and new weekly supply and 2-day supply above on NEAR. Sol finally hit the level I wanted, taking its sweet time, but again, need to see the bounce. And also now has a 3-month supply immediately above. Like I mentioned on Link as well, this was what maybe I was thinking of Sol anyway, that this is one that kind of tested that 3-month before it was confirmed and has come off it. So I don't know if it's going to hold a retest at the same level, but if just be looking for a swing failure in there if it comes back up there for a possible short. But also, Sol finally now is down on the monthly demand. It has had an extended consolidation, but is that just a distribution pattern for a move to come all the way back down here? And again, and I've said before, Sol is like a clone of Ether, where, you know, both on the US dollar pair and the BTC pair, and, you know, Ether now is back down here on the US dollar pair and back down here near the low on the BTC pair. So structurally, I don't want to be overly confident on this when the pattern is basically the same as what we can see play out on something else. But anyway, so also the other thing on Sol, like you know, exactly as I said might happen, I was looking for long entries because we did have monthly demand, but hopefully I have saved the pattern this time. This was, no, I think I've deleted it yet again. I've drawn this pattern multiple times. We have this very common triangle fake out distribution pattern where it doesn't hold tests of the triangle. So I think I'm going to learn my lesson on that, because I think quite a lot of the alts that are following this pattern, I think I haven't seen any alt actually successfully test in here from this pattern and get a decent move up. I think I was hoping for some sort of a decent retracement, again, just a tradable retracement, even if it's only a corrective pattern. It did give, to be fair, it did give the bounce on the Trump pump, but then just unable to hold a higher low thereafter, or not for any period of time. But yeah, again, so Sol is on a decent level, NEAR is on a decent level, DOT could go a bit lower, and Atom is just painful, and Atom really now I'm kind of thinking bigger breakdown is possible on this. Atom was just challenging because, again, I wanted it, you know, to go up and take out those stops there the same way that EOS did, but really hasn't wanted to go anywhere at all. And yeah, so it's got this 12-hour demand down here, which I then moved up for this 4-day here, just in the hope it would give that final bounce up there. The dump has taken it back through that zone, so again, I'll just see what happens on this, but it's looking like it will may create a daily supply, or probably higher time frame supply in there. But yeah, I think I'll just keep an eye on this and see if it flips. It's got, yeah, 3 days until the 4-day closes, but I'll see this 4-day flips to supply. Or if we get a 3-day in there, the end of the day after tomorrow, yeah. So I'm just looking for higher time frame things on Atom, but it's just been a little bit painful in this consolidation. No, my luck, as soon as I start looking for shorts, it'll probably do something like that and run straight back up to the zone that I wanted in the first place. But yeah, so I might just leave that alone. Anyway, on the BTC pairs on these, so Atom again, it's come up and hit and rejecting a 2-month supply. It does have a new 2-week demand in that, so it's come off the 2-month supply back into the 2-week demand, up for another higher high, but only by a wick into the 2-month supply. So again, I can't be bullish on this. While it might at some point, you know, break out, you know, at some point, the same as EOS and others, you know, they do eventually throw these green candles. It's an all-time low. I don't know if this is going to find support here in any shape or form. So it's up to you if you want to keep an eye on that, but being under 2 months supply, it's not something for me that's high probability, nor high probability for longs on the US dollar pair. DOT basically the same. So this has 2 months supply immediately above, except in this case it hasn't come back and tested it, made a new 2-month supply, and then there's a 2-week supply in there which has come up into 2-week weekly supply. But again, this is not something that really inspires confidence for any longs at all. What else we got? NEAR, exactly the same as DOT, and in fact even worse. So again, NEAR really, no, with this now at all-time low, I wouldn't be looking for longs on NEAR particularly either. But again, like similar to the challenges that I talked about with the with the first set of new majors, you know, it's hard when they're on these major demands on the US dollar pair, but the BTC pair is going to zero. You know, so maybe we are going to get that bounce on Bitcoin. Still would like a little bit lower first. But yeah, maybe that bounce on Bitcoin is going to allow these to drop, but then from an investment perspective, that would mean buy Bitcoin over any of these alts. But from a trading perspective, then it's going to vary depending on what your risk to reward is and what entry you can get. But yeah, no, the NEAR is still looking horrendous there, as is DOT and Atom, same. Sol's similar. So again, it's just taken out this low. But really Sol BTC pair, so as I said, this, you know, bears a massive resemblance to Ether, which is now back down here. So again, there's nothing really I want to look for longs on this. Yes, it might pick up support here for a retest, but I'd still just be looking for a bearish retest until we get down into this area, and then again, if not lower. If we're not going to come back into this 3 month or into this 3 day that got just missed after the lunar debacle. Excuse me. So let's hide some of these things. Yeah, so I did have a bounce, but looking for a bounce here off this 2 week demand, but again, the same as it just didn't get anywhere at all. And also has, I think, 3 month or 2 month monthly supply up here as well. So yeah, I mean, overarchingly, nothing really looking that promising on the majors. You know, even though I have said, you know, they are all major demands. Yeah, I guess, so what I would probably really say in summary is my confidence just isn't there for the majors. So while I do have multiple of them hitting major demands, so let's say we've got near on major demand, Sol on major demand, DOT a little bit off but could get there, Link, BNB, ADA and Dogecoin are all on major demands. That doesn't mean they can't go A, all the way to the bottom of said demands, and B, but they're also, because they're too large in a way, like the 6 month and the month, then the yearlies are just too high time frames. So something like Doge, where it's on 2 month now inside the year, maybe a better bet. Something like Sol, which again has just hit at this clean monthly demand that it hasn't tested before, also might be a better bet. But yeah, don't think that these the prices can't drop significantly deeper inside the zones if they want. So I need to go through, and like I say, I have a couple of them I've pointed out that I've reset alerts for a little bit lower, like near this 3 day inside there. I think Litecoin had a daily at the bottom of the trend line that I've alerted, and yeah, so don't think we can't just dip deeper, and that we really, so again, we just need to see some of these supplies break, and or at least some local, you know, daily, if it makes a local daily or 12-hour or 8-hour supply, then you can look for taking out the low, coming back, breaking local supply, and then for the retests on the lower time frames, even just to get back up to here. But I would really suggest that you wait until you actually see something decent rather than FOMOing into any of these, or probably any alts at the moment. And actually, one other thing I haven't commented on, one of the reasons I also say that is because of the total market cap charts. So I'll run through those very quickly now. So let's light a cigarette quickly. Back to the irony of cigarettes stopping me coughing. So total itself, I actually quite like where it is again, but it's again the similar scenario to Ether, that less similar to Ether actually. That's probably a bit too strong. Less similar to Ether, because in this case it is it did actually make a higher high, but it hasn't really made a significant higher high. And this is something I did talk about this previously, but so while this is a better breakout, but again you can see similar here, you know, that we came up here, we did make a higher high, but not a really very strong higher high over this high. And then when it comes back to test this demand, like the wicks was slightly above, but you know, it gets a little bounce and then runs back through it looking for better demand below. And in this case, it hadn't tested this one down here. And it's kind of potentially a similar scenario here, that we've gone up, we have broken out in this case, better than this, but again, it's come back down below the level, below the breakout, and particularly below this breakout level as well. But again, from this perspective, you know, it's back now into this demand area. Are we just going to get a bounce here, same as this, for then a drop back down, looking, you know, either for this monthly demand which hasn't been tested, or this 3 month below? And again, it's exactly the same structure really that I keep commenting on Ether, but it's just, in this case, it's gone a little bit higher and it's more comparable to that structure. But you know, at least in this case, I might be more confident this is going to hold a higher low than on Ether, whereas I'm thinking on Ether that this whole zone is probably going to ultimately break. But anyway, on the lower time frame, again, total, we are in 3 month demand. We are in a 2 week inside the 3 months, and there's a monthly level just a little bit below. So again, we are in a decent zone for it to bounce. We have weekly supply immediately above, so that would be the first risk area to contend with. But at least, I mean, total is probably the only one that at least I'm like, okay, this is possibly a zone that you could start looking for longs, being conscious of trend line stops and it can go deeper in the zone. On the other hand, total 2, total 3, others, and total DeFi, I'm much less confident. So you can see, like in contrast with this, so this is obviously slightly more bearish because it's the same, more like Ether with the double top and the lower high rather than the higher high. It had this 2-month demand here and 3-month demand, the bigger picture. It's come back down now all the way through the monthly at the base of this. And again, like, you know, it might find support on a second test of this zone. But really, if it was very bullish, you'd want it to be making a higher low. In the same as from the same perspective as the total chart, so it had this bounce on the 2-weekly demand in here, but again went straight back up into supply. So the difficulty again with total is this just kind of like a little bit behind in that, you know, it's got now to the same zone that total 2 previously hit. Are we just going to get a move from here back up into weekly supply before a follow-up drop? But yeah, we just need to see as and when that happens. But yeah, total 2, I'm kind of more bearish on. I mean, yeah, it could pick up support here, still could, but not a level I'm confident of looking for longs. It has broken this sort of tighter trend line and has got the more distant trend line down here and the much more distant trend line much lower down there. Also, again, you know, this double top into this, the same as Ether, it's this double top into with an untested annual demand below. So while it seems like horrendous because it's an annual demand and because Ether will go to 700 if it goes to this sort of area, if you were looking at this on the lower time frame, nobody would have any problem with saying that this is probably going to go and test down here. So I don't know, I guess we'll see. Total 3, this was the one, and again, this is sort of more aligned with the majors. So this total 3 removes Bitcoin and Ether, so therefore is more heavily weighted to the majors. So again, this hasn't quite hit the 2-week or the 2-month level in here. So I would have liked this again a little bit lower. But again, runs exactly the same risk as of this structure playing out. But if nothing else, I would like this a little bit lower before being more confident looking for longs on the alt market and from a confluence perspective. Others, the same, so I didn't have a gap. So again, in a weekly or 2-weekly demand was come down much deeper in it, has also broken the very long-term trend line here, at least on the what's this, the linear scale, or the log scale, sorry, the linear scale will be significantly lower. So the linear scale aligns better with this cross here. And okay, I have ignored the COVID dump there, but because it was respecting it quite nicely the rest of the times. But you know, now obviously we're in this potential black swan event that's similar to the COVID dump. So again, that's run through that. So do I want to look for longs on this? No, it's not. You know, it's a second test of a zone. It's coming down heavily inside this monthly area. I really want to look for longs on alts when this is down here, you know, and that's, or at least at the base of this zone. To maybe pick up that as a triple bottom support. But even then, I'm probably looking, as I've said many times, on the inverse head and shoulders on alts to then ultimately come down into here. But again, others total 3 just don't really support longs for me, nor does total 2. Total itself, potentially. So that maybe gives slightly more hope to BTC, but still not much hope for the alt market. And total DeFi is actually the same. So again, it's come down heavily inside this monthly demand. It's even broken this retest potentially of the monthly demand. If we treated that as a swing failure from previously, you know, it got a bounce off the top of there, but now it's come back down and essentially has broken that zone again now. So again, I would like this lower, if not all the way down here ultimately. But at least in the short term, this weekly, and then possibly this 3-month below. Yeah, so when kind of all of this really just, for me, just supports, you know, what I said on US dollar dominance, you know, that I want this, I would like to see this up here. Let me just draw this trend line just in case that helps. But yeah, unless this is just sort of a fake out of the trend line, you know, and all the totals are faking down of the trend line, and we get some really strong weekly close for some reason, maybe off the back of CPI, PPI on Thursday and Friday, then, you know, I can't really be bullish on the crypto market right now. I guess the only bullish things, like I say, I can make a bullish case if I want to, but for me it's the lower probability. Like the bearish case remains the higher probability. If we start to see zones break, then I will flip my thesis, but at the moment my thesis is that this remains bullish and the crypto market remains bearish until potentially that we get up into this area. I don't think there was much to say when I was looking at the dominances earlier, so the only thing is Bitcoin again is just about to test this 6 month the 6 month level, so that's kind of interesting. And then the Ether dominance is about to go to 0, has nearly now ploughed entirely through and is potentially going to like get to all-time low. But I mean, yeah, you can keep an eye on Ether here. You know, if this picks up a support from a dominance perspective, maybe Ether is going to get that massive bounce. But again, after what, 2 years or so of downtrend, we still need to see kind of a lot more, or at least more of an aggressive move up for a week or two that then holds a retest before being like even remotely wanting to long Ether over any of the rest of the market, quite frankly. And yeah, so then others dominance and total DeFi dominance, I think, were the other two that were worth considering. So again, this is like I was concerned that maybe this would end up being a swing failure. Not concerned, but it would be good for the alt market. But obviously unable to get back past local supply. It's now dropped again. It's a second test of that level with a new weekly supply above, and then a new 2 month supply above that. So again, like others dominance, I would still expect lower. So kind of like, so for me, like I guess everything really still supports lower. Whether the indices and the Tradfi is going to drag us back up for some sort of a retest or something first, I'm not sure. But at the moment, everything still points to lower unless I see some supply broken and yeah, some strength in the market. But at the moment, that isn't happening. Yeah, so that's about it. That's an hour on Bitcoin, Ether, and the market in general. Like I said, be conscious of that potential daily supply being created on Bitcoin and don't be FOMOing too much into longs. If you're longing down here, I mean, I still would say wait for zones to get hit. You don't, if you're an investor and you want to just spread entries from 60 to 70k or whatever, then feel free. Or probably lower than that, maybe like 50 to 50s to 70k. In fact, even 45. So I mean, the other critical level on Bitcoin, should we get a really big drop, is the annual level, which is at 46,200. So if we do end up with some COVID style black swan dump, 46 and the zone just below, just inside that annual level, for me are going to be very critical levels to look for possible longs. But yeah, hopefully that's a long way off, and hopefully if nothing else, we're going to get a stable fall. We have had an increase in the stability of Bitcoin compared to back in the day when we all first started. Obviously, the corrections are smaller, but we don't have the same crazy volatility at tops that we used to have, back in 2018. That even died off in 2021 and 2022, and then has died off even more so now. Although I guess we'll see, maybe I'll be completely wrong, maybe we haven't put in the top, and then when we do put in the top, we're going to end up with some crazy volatility up for 175k. But anyway, like I say, you don't need to FOMO into any of these entries. There are a lot of zones in here and a lot of possible levels that you could look at for longs. I would say, yeah, just either spread your entries widely and keep your risk low, and then you can add depending on what the price does when it gets into there. If you're scared of missing out. If you're a trader, then obviously you're just waiting for the low time frames to give you proper entries rather than trying to FOMO in on every single bounce. Yeah, so not much more to say on that. The only other thing I wanted to talk about, I was going to go over some alts today, so I managed to, this is my full list. So the alts I went through in the previous stream, which may all probably look completely ugly now, I'm not sure, maybe they've all broken down. are in the top section. I made a second section for everything that's happened since I last streamed on it, and there's already kind of got 50 odd alts in there, I think, if not more, maybe 100. And I got down to ICP today, so I got the sort of the first half of the list, and I wanted to go through them now, but I don't know if my voice is going to fail me a little bit. I mean, they might all be quite quick, so I might get started on these just to get some alts on this stream, and then I can do the rest yesterday, because at least the alerts have slowed down, and also at least it gives you sort of possible entries if you're really wanting to get into some alts for holding for longer periods. So SHIB, this came off annual supply at the high, but has now come into monthly demand at the low. So if this kind of swing fails that level, then this is something you can start looking for longs on. But again, I think I'm not going to repeat myself on every single all of them. You need to watch the lower time frame, because you are trying to long into this big downtrend. But I want to go over these also just to point out some things. So the other thing of interest is that in most cases, these have now all had at least 5 or if not 7 waves down, depending on how I might not have drawn that exactly right. But once we have had the 5 waves down, then we potentially are looking for the bigger corrective structure. So, and with so many 3 months, so in this case, I've got an alert here for the 3-month supply. Obviously, it can go higher inside it. But again, so many of these I just want to fib later, when the alerts go for possible shorts. I want to see where the low's been put in. So this, for example, the 61's up on this 2-week, 3-week supply inside the 3 months. So I probably expect this to go higher. But yeah, once you've had that drop and you're looking for the retracement, so even if with this drop, for example, you had 5 waves, and then you're looking for an ABC up, and that can, in this case has gone all the way to the top of that last down move. I don't know what fib that is, I won't bother doing that now. It's probably the 88 or 78 up there. But we're kind of looking for that now, that have we now had this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now we're looking for an ABC. That could also then give the reaction here for the B wave, and then we get a C wave after. So again, so I'm sticking with these sort of slightly more aggressive alerts for shorts in here, but with the potential of this being an ABC with a second alert that I'll place later being higher. But anyway, SHIB back down on monthly demand, decent area to look for longs, got a weekly inside, and I've reset the alert. There is also an untested, not quite tested 2 month down here, should it drop lower again. ARPA has been a bit of a disappointment, so this had a major annual demand, and also then this 3 month inside it, and then the 6 month just below as well. But it's been a bit of a struggle. So off the top, I think this was monthly demand up here as well. Off the top of it, we really got very little. Then I had an alert go for, I think it was a 5-day in here, I believe. Yeah, 5-day demand there, you can see. So it's wicked through that, but hasn't quite got down to the 6 month level. So again, like now I would potentially like this slightly lower, but also something that if it does ever give a sort of retracement, even. So I guess when you compare this downtrend, if you look back here, we had so much volatility on these downtrends, and every bounce gave you something decent and tradable. This is a 5-day chart, so at least, a few weeks of up. We're really getting nothing. Like every bounce off this is giving very, very little tradable to the upside before just rejecting the first supply and coming back down again. So obviously, as I keep saying, like shorts have always been the higher probability. Something like this, I've been avoiding shorts on purely because I've known it's been in this sort of annual, monthly, 3 month, 6 month demand. So I've been shorting things more aggressively where they're weaker. But at some stage, I really hope these are going to give either a next up move. So in the case of ARPA, it's 3 month demand. This can potentially give another up move. It's come off monthly at the lows. Does have this 3 month in there. Hopefully it won't be weak demand all the week. It is weak demand again because it hasn't closed above this high, but it could still do an additional wave and achieve that. And it's obviously one of the stronger ones compared to everything else. Yeah, I'm just kind of thinking about this, I guess now, like with my thesis on Ether and everything else, like maybe this is just going to end up just as weak and drop back through, down to these lower levels. But as I've said before, I guess, and again, I'll just draw the pattern for you. So this is the challenge that we've got in many cases, these sort of badly drawn triangle structures like this. So if this is an A wave and the drop, then this is the correction, the B wave. So then the C wave can either come down to here, or did not mean to do that. Or could end up as a triangle correction before the up move. So we could have it with the C wave could end. This would be still quite an aggressive C wave. This would have to be quite strong for this to be the case. But again, it's coming off this 2 month at the low, so it is possible we get the bounce here. But yeah, I don't love the inability to break the high, and the fact this is still coming off supply, monthly supply at the highs. AFT I think was just one that was, it was an aggressive, this was an aggressive long for a higher low, but yeah, not a, I don't know whether that was a 3-day or something there. So it was a 2-day demand in there. Anyway, so yeah, it was obviously a very high risk entry there. Hasn't really got any bounce at all. Now made a new daily supply above. I thought I put an alert on that daily supply earlier. Maybe not quite yet. So I think I wanted to wait for this. So this I think is probably going to be good for shorts, but it is a bit choppy through here, and I wanted to wait for it to break the low before looking for more aggressive shorts on this. And I think that 2-week or monthly level to confirm. So I think that's why I put it in black, because I wasn't confident that's an area where I potentially look for shorts, but it might be, I just think it's a little bit too early in case this makes a double bottom. AI16Z, another one that it's actually there, so the alert there is slightly more aggressive. It hasn't quite hit the level yet, so this was on a 12-hour demand in there. So again, hasn't quite hit the level yet, so you can keep an eye on that if it's coming back in there, but obviously it's not necessarily the nicest of levels, and you might want to wait for that to bounce and then get back in higher if it's going to kind of start having a move that might break the trend lines. It's another one there actually that I had the more aggressive short entry that may not be valid anymore. AL I've done in the last couple of streams, so this is something, again, it's not dissimilar to AFT, like it really has no history and this could just well die, but I wanted to keep an eye because of the lack of supply. So at least I was hoping we get the bounce here, which we did. Then I had an aggressive entry here for a retest on the 8-hour, but so far it has been unable to break out. But I did put this in the group earlier, so I'd be looking, if this can close above here, creating an 8-hour demand with a strong green candle, then that's a decent long potential entry. And then similarly, this also, if it can create a 2-day demand by closing above 816. So again, you're just looking for this, is it going to manage to create new demand that can then allow for a new entry? But just be careful on it, because if it does fall, then it's obviously going to fall off the trend line. So I wouldn't be FOMOing into this now. Like if you were in from earlier, that's great, but making a nice little consolidation here, so it's worth keeping an eye on that. AKT. So another one with a monthly demand that it may or may not hold. It's not great that it's got these sort of gaps and other untested zones below. So so I've reset the alert for lower if it drops lower. It's got a weekly supply immediately above, which may, the other thing with a lot of these is that we've still got 2 weeks to the close, but if they create a 3-week supply in here, this isn't going to be good either. But obviously it's still 2 weeks to go on that. But yeah, so it's closed below the weekly level, and it's got a 5-day supply, so I won't be looking for shorts on this until much higher. You can keep an eye on that. I've set an alert here for the next level, but I did put a disclaimer in saying, this could go deeper down to the 2-month or the 3-week if it wants to if it's aggressive and it wants to take out some stops there. But yeah, again, in a zone of interest that may or may not give a bounce. ALCH is still reasonably strong. I did have a more aggressive, so this is in a 2-week demand and it's still holding, so I did have a more aggressive long entry. I think there was a 2-day or daily demand on this, which it has run through. So yeah, of these alerts, there are some that went, on the first sort of drop on Bitcoin, and then there were some that then they generally got taken out if they were hit too early before the Bitcoin drop. So anyway, this is obviously still holding 2-weekly demand. It's taken out that low, so it's possible it goes back and takes out this high. But again, I'm not confident longing in this now with a new 3-day supply above. I was kind of looking at what's in there. It's got a 12-hour supply in here, and it's also got an 8-hour just there. But yeah, so it's got, it's made new 8-hour demands on this, and let me think. New 8-hour demand, bounced off it, but it's got an 8-hour supply immediately above. But again, because of the 2-week, I don't really want to long this. Sorry, I don't really want to short this in here because of the 2-week demand, but I don't really want to long this. So again, something just to keep an eye on. And if it can get a bigger drop, then I might look, you know, if it starts really sort of confirming this is a downtrend. Like at the moment, we do have a sort of downtrend in here. We've got a lower high and we've got a lower low. But in the context of the bigger uptrend, this is still, you know, it is actually that triangle consolidate, that triangle pattern that I drew on Sol a few minutes ago. That so could do that. But again, it's still trying. So again, I would like to see this 2-week flip to supply, and then I'd be more confident looking for shorts on that. ALGO. Again, a tough one. This isn't a big 6-month demand, but it's obviously coming down lower and lower inside it. I think that this was a slightly more aggressive entry on a daily demand, but it also has 3-week and monthly just a little bit below, or 2-week and monthly a little bit below. So again, something you can watch for longs, but still reasonable amounts of supply above. So potentially this is still going to go and take out that supply and come back into the lower zones. So yeah, I mean, ALGO is not an ideal one. There's too much choppy supply immediately above, so I would leave that alone. APT, this is just kind of a last hurrah level. So last hurrah daily demand. I mean, I'm expecting this to probably drop. So I did actually add an aggressive alert when I was looking at this earlier on weekly supply there. You know, if that does fail, it's got 2 months, 3 months, sort of 3-day and a 2-day. I probably would just start looking. Yeah, note also a lot of the alts have this 2-day supply coinciding with this 3-month level. So that's kind of a zone that I would look at provisionally on most alts in order to have a tighter stop based on the 3-month supply, because obviously you don't want to short here and have your short stop all the way up there. But these 2 days, just keep an eye on those if we do get a move through this local, taking out perhaps some of these stops here, and look for those levels there. But in the case of this, I think, you know, because we're on a daily demand, I'm not overly confident APT is really going to go up from here. So I thought it was worth, again, as always, I like to have some more aggressive entries just in case. You know, at some point they will all get blasted, you know, when they're too late. So for example here, you know, when it's finally reverses, then obviously it's not going to work. So, but until that happens, we shall see. Here I could have argued the same thing. I think I only put in a short here on a daily supply. Yeah, it took its time rejecting off there, but again, it ended up being a nice entry. APU, yeah, so that would have been a very high risk long entry, a daily demand there. Only if the market's reversing is this going to work. Yeah, not high probability in the grand scheme of everything we've got there. Fairly likely to break down. APX. Yeah, I was a little uncertain about this chart actually, and it's just on MEXC, so I don't know how much people are interested. So it's got a big 6-month demand, it's got a 3-month and a 2-month, which it came back down into here, or just above. So I think, again, because it had a decent move off here after some consolidation, I kind of thought let's look for the higher low. But obviously it may or may not hold here. But yeah, you can keep an eye on that if you want to. It's, yeah, possibly because it's just MEXC and it's not that new actually. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, again, there's probably better longs than this. I would prefer to short that if it comes up into this area rather than look for longs probably. But you know, it does have 2-month, 3-month demand. I think, yeah, I was looking for where I could put a new long entry, and I just don't really love any of this. Either it holds here or in this area, or then would just wait it out. ARPA. This is hitting an annual demand, so again, something that you can watch, but so far, yeah, no sign of actual bouncing. New weekly supply above, new 3-month above that. So, but it is, you know, it's an annual level. So AR is, you know, it's again, this is another 3-month demand, but it came off the annual supply. So you can see, like, when we're coming off these major high time frame supplies, then we don't expect the demands to hold, you know, like, while, you know, I put entries in the hope they'll give a bounce. So, you know, really you would like a bounce off here somewhere to get back up to there, even if we are then going to make a lower low ultimately. But you know, this time round and this drop, we really haven't got any retracements, as I've said. You know, there's only very little. You know, so that probably would have been a monthly demand that I had alerted there, I'm assuming. You know, it's got very little bounce before dropping down way deeper. So I think I reset the alert for this. It come off this daily level, but the alert was for 3-week demand. So I have reset that alert if it does drop a bit lower. But again, last hurrah level, like I don't know if this is going to make a higher low or give any kind of bounce at all. AXS. Another one that's looking pretty ugly. I think I might have missed doing this earlier, or it's saved some of my drawings from another layout. So obviously, yeah, this has now taken out the monthly demand there. Hide that. So yeah, I mean, okay, it's possible it just takes out this low into 2-weekly demand. So again, something you can watch to see if this can pick up support here. At least in the case of this, it's a relatively clean support. You know, it's come down significantly from there. It's got a new weekly supply and new 2-weekly supply above that I've already got alerted. But yeah, I mean, it's a big zone, so it needs some time. Bake. Another one coming off annual supply at the highs. And with new, so it's going to have that 3-month level. There's still, so it's still, yeah, it's still tentatively, it's quite similar to the AR actually. I think it was AR. Yeah, so tentatively it's still in 3-month demand. AXS is different. Bake. So yeah, similar to AR, it's still tentatively in 3-month demand. So here you can see, I mean, Bake is a better example maybe than AR, that like it did have multiple tests off this level already. Did AR have that and I just missed that? Or yeah, so in the case of AR, you know, in this case it hasn't had, I mean, okay, it had the immediate test here, but it hasn't come back for the retest in the same way Bake has. But it's basically exactly the same structure. Both with annual supplies at the highs, both with this new 3-month, you know, as in the case of Bake it did get some decent retests, but in the case of AR not. So you know, on that basis maybe AR will pick up better support now because it really hasn't had a decent retest, whereas in contrast Bake obviously had multiple tests off this level before breaking down violently thereafter. So there's a 3-week supply up here, so I've set a short alert there. But again, you know, last hurrah level for Bake. Oh yeah, the only thing with Bake is I guess these are very relatively equal lows here. So again, I reset the alert for if it comes down to take out this level as well. But yeah, certainly on Bake you can look for longs because this actually does at least get some volatility compared to the rest of the market. And if it does want to hold a higher low here, you could get a very good entry. So Bake's probably the only one so far that I would say is kind of, you know, halfway decent. Bananas 31. So this we had that aggressive long and aggressive short that I think I've talked about in previous streams. So I had an aggressive long off this 12-hour demand here and then aggressive short. So the alert did go for this, but it didn't quite hit the 12-hour supply there. Maybe did on other exchanges, I don't know, but didn't quite hit that 12-hour, and then it's made a new 12-hour, and I think it's either made a new daily, or it looks like it'll make a new daily. So for now, I've left the entry in the same place in case it wants to make a higher low and come up and take that out, and or, you know, it could still go up and take out the high. But again, for this, I just want to see a little bit higher time frame, similar to the discussions we've had before on form and layer and DBR and the things that we were looking for shorts aggressively in, you know, scenarios like this where you don't really know what's going to happen. Or where, what I mean is it could still break out. So yeah, I'd like to see this create a 5-day supply, perhaps a 3-day. No, it doesn't have a 3-day. But yeah, I'd like to see a bit of a cleaner supply on this to then, so I'd like a couple of days of down, then I would look for shorts in here. But for now, just in case it takes out that high again and properly goes into this 8-hour, I've left the alert reset up there. And then down here, there's obviously this weekly demand and the trend line stops that it could run through. Actually, we should look at broccoli on that, because broccoli in similar structure to this has run through those trend line stops when I had the more aggressive entry on the top of this consolidation. But we'll get to broccoli. I think I'll finish up with the bees because it's late now and there's not really anybody around to watch anyway. and then do a better stream tomorrow on more of the alts. Drift of death, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to pick up either. But again, you're looking for a drift of death to then start resolving into some decent green candles. So if you see some decent green candles on this, then start looking for the re-entry like we got there. But for now, this could, still don't just think it's because it's going slowly. It doesn't mean it can't keep going for a long period of time. BIGTIME. BIGTIME is my only other maybe on the long side that I'm kind of more interested in. It made a weekly demand and then a 5-day demand. It's still in a downtrend. It's still coming off 2-week supply, and I don't love that it's got the 2-month level there as well. But if it does hold this zone, then again, this has the capacity to have a bigger move up. So I might actually just set that 3-month supply alert while I'm here. But yeah, so the only thing, so again, like there isn't a new entry I can put on this right now. And also, yeah, the only other thing I didn't like on this is, again, it might make daily supply in here because obviously the whole market's coming down again now. I'm not sure if this is going to survive. But yeah, be aware of this. It's got weekly demand. It's got a 5-day also just above it. It gave a nice entry off this daily demand in here with a decent bounce, but again, is now currently retracing that whole move and may make a new daily supply. So again, it's not ready, but it's something that's worth keeping your eye on. Yeah, and the other reason being is obviously it had this very strong move up, a weak move up there, and it came down hard, but then it did hold support here. It could also, be swing failing this all-time low from over there, so that's the orange level in here. So that was why I had that as a possible entry there. But again, just need to see something more pick up. Anyway, I'm going to go because, yeah, my voice is failing. Okay, wait, broccoli is the last one on the bees, so then I will do that and then leave. So, as I just mentioned on, what was it, Bananas 31, this was a different structure, but again, it had these stops under here whilst having a weekly demand here. So, yeah, it's like maybe you can look for weekly demand, but it's very possible it'll come through and take those stops into this daily below. Again, overarchingly, this is a downtrend with a retracement, and we expect a lower low on this, but the optimism of hoping for a higher low at this point. So yeah, this is not a high probability trade either. So really often, all the ones I've shown you, I guess none of them are particularly high probability. ALCH 16%, I don't know if that's pumping while I'm talking. For some reason my computer's doing that resetting thing again. Yeah, so I guess there's not much really I can add on this. Yeah, so I suppose overarchingly alts of the A's and B's that we've seen and the ones we've hit, there's a few of them are on very high time frame demands, which you should keep an eye on. But again, they may take time. There's a few of them, quite a few of them, just in a downtrend. Runners wouldn't necessarily touch, and they were just optimistic possible long entries. That's probably most of them. And then, yeah, so there's a few on the high time frame. Most are just don't touch them. And then a couple on the, at sort of last hurrah levels, like I was saying with BIGTIME, with AR, with Cake, that again are probably worth watching, because if you can get those entries that are sort of down here with your stop below the low, and that does end up being the bottom, then you could get a very nice entry. It could end up being extremely nice. But yeah, so not much to add other than that. Yeah, there's just too many alerts coming through again. I was hoping this would be a nice, easy, now I've finished all the alphabet, I wouldn't end up with quite so many, but I will update these later today. The only other one, just again for keeping an eye on, was GOMINING. So this is one I've said, keep an eye on anyway, because it was on a 3-month demand, and it was one of the stronger, it's just one of the overarchingly stronger charts. It may have changed its mind and not be that anymore, but from a high time frame perspective, we've got an annual demand that I've set the alert for weekly, and the annual a little bit lower. We've got this 3-month here, which hasn't tested yet. I don't love that it's now come down below monthly, and it has broken this monthly, but at the moment it hasn't confirmed a monthly supply. So if it can still get a decent bounce off here through April, you know, there is a chance this is going to get back up here and not create a monthly supply and still be strong. You know, I've left an alert there on that weekly supply for a possible short if it took out this high. But yeah, this is not really a high probability short should it get back up there. But yeah, GOMINING should definitely be on your radar as something that could end up being bullish. I was really hoping today it would actually create a new daily demand in there, but it doesn't look like, possibly even no, it's just a daily. Doesn't look like it wants to right now. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. I will be back tomorrow and hopefully I'll have more viewers and more people talking to me. Let me know if you have any questions. Please like and subscribe to support me. Yeah, if you have any questions, just hit me up. You can put in the comments here, I read those, or you can put in on Telegram. And please feel free to join my Telegram channel. All the links are in the description if you want to chat to like-minded people. So have a good evening and thanks for watching.